the September meeting of the Village of Pinehurst Historic Preservation Commission. The purpose of the commission is to approve certificates of appropriateness for new construction or major work, and to do so by conducting hearings and making findings of fact when applications come before us. Our mission is to take no action except to preserve and approve that which is congruous with the special character of the Village of Pinehurst Historic District. I'm Eric Von Salzen, the chairman. I'm going to ask each of the commissioners, starting from my far left, to state their names.
Richard Vincent.
Thomas Schroeder.
Terry Lurch.
Ann Lucy.
David Herring.
We have a quorum, so we can proceed. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, so anyone desiring to testify must be sworn in, and we are required to consider only facts presented in this hearing. The proceedings are, we trust, video recorded. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes of our last meeting. I believe everyone has received a copy of the draft minutes, actually, of our last two meetings, a special meeting on September 10th and a regular meeting on August 27th. Does anyone have any suggested corrections or other comments on either set of minutes? Hearing none. I have a motion to accept the September 10th, 2020 special meeting minutes. So moved.
Second.
Second. Any comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
For the record, the second on that was Tom Schroeder, correct? Okay.
And a similar motion with respect to the regular meeting of August 27, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
The first on that was Tom, the second was Richard.
Very good. We are now ready to open the public hearing. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have two cases before us on the docket today. I'll ask the commissioners to disclose any site visits or ex parte communications they have had with respect to these two matters, starting with Mr. Vincent.
No ex parte communication, visited both the sites.
No ex parte communications, visited both sites.
Ditto.
Ditto, ditto.
I visited both sites, no ex parte communication.
I only visited 30 Caddell. No communication. Did not visit Kelly Road.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to swear in Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes, do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I will now ask, let's see, are we
Which one are we doing first?
proceeding with 30 Caddell first?
That is correct. So the applicant is Mrs. Nicholas.
All right.
Sorry, Miss Nicholas.
Ms. Nicholas, would you stand and raise your right hand?
Ask her to approach the mic so we can get on the record.
Sorry?
She needs to approach the...
Oh. All right, do you affirm that the testimony you shall give the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who is planning to or may want to speak with respect to 30 Caddell Road? I could swear you in now. Hearing none. All right, Peter, can you present the application?
Yes, sir. This public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for multiple exterior modifications to a primary structure within the Historic District at 30 Caddell Road. This exterior modifications include replacement of multiple windows, replacement of siding material, removal and replacement of existing decking, and painting of the exterior of the structure. The property can be identified in Moore County Text Registry by Moore County PIN number 855-212-972-275. The property owner and applicant is Amy Nicholas. Here is the front elevation photo. The one on the left was submitted by the applicant, and the one on the right was taken by staff. This is 30 Caddell Road. There have been 2 previous COAs that have been issued for this property. In 2007, there was a major COA for replacement of windows, and in 2018, there was a minor for the replacement of a paver driveway with crushed bluestone. According to the National Historic Landmark Survey, the primary structure at 30 Caddell Road is contributing, and most of the adjacent properties are also contributing. This is a list of the notified properties with their designation as contributing as not, or as not. As you can see, a majority of the contributing properties were built in 1915, and the ones that are not were built in the late 20th century and are located on Barrett Road. I would like to highlight address 255 Magnolia. This is one of the ones that was contributing at one point but became uncontributing because we allowed so many adverse and incongruous alterations, and that's the purpose of us being here, is to make sure that we maintain the congruity of our district. This is the notification map for 30 Caddell Road. A total of 7 properties were notified in addition to the applicant. The request is before the commission because according to Historic District guidelines, replacement of siding or resurfacing an exterior wall with different material than existing is considered major work. The applicant's full request includes the replacement of existing deteriorating wood siding with a fiber cement product, the painting of the exterior of the structure with a different color that is consistent with the Village of Pinehurst color palette, replacement of existing decking with comparable material, and replacement of 4 windows with like-for-like material. These are the submitted photos by the applicant along with the deteriorating siding. The photo in the bottom center is the proposed niche fiber cement product, which will be going on the siding. The proposed siding will remain as that German lap siding throughout the house. The proposed color is that Yarmouth blue that's in your packet. And then the identified windows for you guys that are being proposed to replace, and the applicant has indicated that she'd like to preserve 2 of them if she can, but would like the option to replace them if she cannot. So on the left, we have the 2 rear windows in the dormer that are being replaced with a double hung window to match the ones that are on the front with the same detail on the front here on the right. And then the ones that she'd like to replace, if she can't maintain them, are the ones on the left elevation of the home here in the apex of the roof. A total of 4 windows are being proposed to be replaced. This is the existing stair and rail detail for the proposed decking. As you can see here, it's a typical deck. Most times we won't see decks here, but she included as part of her major COA request, so you guys get the opportunity to voice any opinions on it. Here again, we show the decking along with her proposed material. She's using a treated lumber for the deck flooring and a treated railing as well. And this was the proposed materials that she included: wooden siding, for existing material for the siding, going to niche fiber cement, which is something that we approved previously. Re-elevation, same thing. And then we have the windows, which are aluminum clad windows, staying aluminum clad windows being painted white. And the trim is a Miratech product, which is another engineered wood product we approved previously. And then the deck is matching existing. At this time, staff would like to submit the following to the record: staff report, presentation, application, applicant's material, photo, site plans, and findings of fact.
They shall be admitted into the record. Do any of the commissioners at this point have any questions? Mr. Hughes? All right, then...
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you certainly may.
In talking more with my proposed contractor for this very large project, if I wanted to change my application with regard to the front porch, the flooring material, to have a concrete slab instead of wood, what would be the difficulty of doing that?
You would just need to state for the record that you'd like to do that.
That's all I'd have to do?
And
Okay.
then they get to review that, and they
Okay.
may say that you don't have enough information for them to approve, but that's something they'll have to determine.
It's just, so I would like to request that I be able to use a concrete slab for the front covered porch, not the side porch, the front covered part.
So just for the record, the area between, I guess, the front frame of the door here,
Correct.
over to the left to the extension of the covered area.
That's correct.
Or just for clarification, your presented plans would call for a wood surface in that area, and you're proposing to change that to...
A concrete.
Do you have any more specifics about what kind of concrete, what color, what...
No, but I'm sure I will probably paint it like a light gray or something, but no, I don't have any specifics more about. I've walked through with my contractor in terms of the process for doing that, filling with dirt. There's some lattice work that goes underneath it, then he fills. He showed me where he could box it out. He's going to, I don't know if you can go back to that front picture. The house in the front, the lower foundation of the house, most of it is just a lattice because most of the front of the house from the street is just deck right now. If he's able to do the cement under the covered porch part, he can run the brick foundation consistent with the rest of the house along that area too, just to make it look much more consistent with the other foundation porches. So that's what we were thinking would look the best.
Got a question.
What-
Yeah, so if I understand then, you're not only substituting the surface of the deck for concrete, but I would assume it's changing the whole foundation. I heard you mention brick, which I don't see in here is part of what you were doing.
Okay,
Stake.
so it's not it's like a facing, I guess, you would put on that part of the concrete? It's not like the whole brick? Again, I'm not the contractor, so you're gonna have to like deal with my layman explanation of this.
Oh, that's fine.
But it would help create a consistent look across the front of the house. He can't put that brick facade, I mean, I guess he could technically put that brick facade look, but it would, the front porch is incredibly sloped. It would help level that front porch right now too.
So instead of the lattice.
Yeah, the lattice is, you can see, it's gross. Yeah, the house
That would be where
should
the
have.
brick is then.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, you got it, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
As a formality, are you, I take it you're officially moving to amend your application in the manner that you've just described? Is that
Correct, yes, sir.
Understanding that the commission might be more willing to accept the original application, which we've had a chance to study, than your amended application. Take it if we don't accept your amended application, we don't grant your amended application, you would still want to proceed with the wooden decking, is that
Yeah,
correct?
yes, yes, sir.
Is the commission prepared to accept the amendment? I'm not saying vote on approving it, but simply accepting the amendment to the application. Applicant has just.
I need a little more clarification, Amy. Where specifically are you talking about using concrete? Can you show us on a picture?
It's
But
the,
Exhibit C, I think, is the closest one.
the middle picture, the floor of that covered porch area.
There's Exhibit C on it, that right there.
Yeah.
The one on the left. Well, yeah.
So, point the arrow, please.
Where does it
Well, you wouldn't
actually-
see concrete from the
vertical
road.
slab?
You would
don't
see the
believe
brick
it's there, no.
facing.
Vertical or is that horizontal?
Okay, so the concrete would be the whole floor of that covered porch area. Right now, it's wood. So they'll fill it in with concrete. And then from the road, from that portion of the porch where there's currently lattice, there will be a brick facing to match the brick facing of the rest of the foundation of the house.
So we wouldn't see the concrete from the...
No, sir, no. The concrete would be covered with a brick facing to match. There's brick all around the rest of the house, yeah.
Just clarification, I believe the applicant has a right to modify the package if she so chooses. That's her choice, not ours. I think given that, I think I need to see more before I'm willing to go ahead, because I don't see I don't see the effect of it on the house in the pictures we have right now. I mean, it's fairly easy, I think, to understand I'm replacing the planks because they're already existing wooden floor there. But now you're talking about doing away with the planks, adding concrete, and then adding a brick facing where there's now lattice work there as well. So
Is the wood currently painted gray?
The wood is stained,
Stained gray or
stained red,
red?
very faded reddish,
Would be my
So, I
opinion.
mean,
orangey red.
Wrong, though. There is brick facing on other portions of the house that face the
Yes, sir.
street, right?
That's correct.
It would be consistent with the look.
That's what I'm trying to achieve, Yep.
Look at the top right photo, the back of the house. has
Back of
a
the house
foundation.
has.
And the
I'm
side.
not sure there's any brick facing on the front. Right there.
Yeah. with the
It's on the
lat-
steps there.
Oh, on the
Right on the
steps, okay.
steps.
steps.
Okay,
I don't
I,
want
it's
to
just
get
my
into-
opinion.
Excuse me, Commissioners, let's not get into the merits of whether it's a good idea or not.
Right, that's not ours.
The applicant wants to change the application in the way that she has described.
Right.
She has said that if that change in the application is allowed, but if we don't approve the amended application, then she wants the original application to be considered. So the question for the commissioners is, are we prepared to proceed, consider the merits of this application on that basis?
Yes.
I am.
I am? I think, all right, everyone is. So just so we all understand the ground rules, we'll consider your amended application. If, when it comes to our decision, a majority of the commission decides that they don't have enough information, or they don't like concrete, or they don't like bricks, or whatever it is, but they like your original plan, then we'll vote on your original plan. Is that
That makes sense. Yep.
acceptable to you? And
Yes.
does everybody in the commission
The
agree that
question,
that's
is
how
there
we're
any
going to proceed?
provision of the standards guidelines, Peter, that,
You can have a concrete porch, it can be a brick foundation, everything that she's proposing would be consistent with the guidelines, and as she's explained, she already has existing portions of her house that have a brick foundation, so she'd be harmonious or congruent with herself as well. So it would be compatible with the existing architecture. And there are other structures that have brick foundation throughout the historic district.
Thank you, Peter. All right, Ms. Nicholas, would you like to proceed?
Beyond Mr. Hughes's presentation? There's nothing other related to the amendment, yeah. Go ahead.
Questions for the applicant by members of the commission?
You're going to make a presentation?
That was her presentation, she's ended it
That was, yeah, sorry.
on what I
Peter was so
stated.
thorough. Nothing else to add.
As long as she has the opportunity.
Yes, I have several.
All right, take it away, Mr. Herring.
In the application regarding the wood railing and pickets on the front porch. In Exhibit A, under general information on page 1,
Not have the application.
Amy, these are mostly just to clarify some inconsistencies in the application. They're not judgments at all.
Okay.
Okay, there's page 1.
Right at the bottom,
Right at the bottom, yes, sir.
that paragraph. It says there, PVC handrail and pickets.
On the rear decks.
Okay, so there'll be two different solutions, one for the rear, one for the front?
You got it. Replaced with the same materials that are currently there. So the wood, the front porch decks is all wood railing. The rear is all PVC.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not changing any of the materials that are already there. Yeah.
Secondly, in the list in Exhibit A on page 4 of the exhibit, 2, 3, 4. Under front porch, it says wood railing and pickets. And what you're saying is the wood railing and pickets apply to the front porch only, not the rear one.
That's correct. Mhm.
You show in, also in one of your Exhibit R, so confusing here, information, Exhibit A. Composite. It says, the Exhibit S says pressure treated, Exhibit R says composite.
For the rear. So the composite floor decking boards will be used on the rear small walkout decks. Yeah.
What about pressure treated? Where's that going?
So I was going to keep the whole front porch all wood that's there now, just because I like the look of that better from the street, truthfully. Although, so if I go down the, like, what if I do decide, maybe I should use composite flooring? Like, do I need to come back? Or if I want to use a mix of wood railing, composite flooring?
Would be my opinion for my own vote.
Okay.
Composite beats wood any day. I'd be in favor of that tonight.
Would do what?
I'd be in favor on the front porch.
To use the composite flooring and the
Talking
wood?
about the floor, right?
Just the floor, yeah.
Now, a minute ago, you said you want to use concrete, so
No, not on the deck. The
on the
porch,
deck.
yeah, No, the porch is the concrete flooring, for sure. I don't want to use wood on the
on
porch.
the rear, you want to use a composite.
Well, it's already there, yes. That's what I proposed to on the rear. But I'm saying on the front, I've originally thought, well, maybe I'll just keep with the wood deck. Again, the deck being just the side that won't be under the concrete porch.
The uncovered portion of
Yeah,
the
the
deck.
uncovered of the deck. If I wanted to change, if you approved the composite materials in the back, and I decided I did want to go composite in the front too,
I'm a little confused where there's uncovered front porch.
you want to go back to the, there's not an uncovered front porch. To me, a porch is the part that's
So
under
if
the
you look at
roof.
the right side, she's talking about the area under the roof here as her front porch. And then
And
this
there's a
area to the
whole
side.
uncovered deck. I call
be
that the
deck.
deck. The covered part I call the porch.
There are 3 outdoor hard surfaces, a front porch, a deck, and a rear something.
2 small rear walkout decks from 2 rear doors.
Okay, just to help
So
me.
there's 4, really,
Starting with the
technically.
front porch.
Correct.
And there's the one on the
Concrete.
rear.
Concrete.
Go next to that uncovered deck.
Deck.
Composite?
Well, in the application, I have wood, but that's what I'm asking. Like,
I vote for composite.
okay.
Okay, and then going around the rear,
Around the rear, there's a small walkout deck
okay?
from my kitchen. Composite, all composite. Composite floor, PVC railing. Well, I guess it's, yeah, composite railing.
Okay, so let's circle back to the front
Okay.
porch. The railing, what do you want to do?
I don't know. I don't like the look of composite railing on the front of this house, personally.
Yeah.
I like a wood railing. It matches the wood beams that are staying where they are on the porch. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with wood railing.
Wood railing to match the details that exist today.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But the composite flooring might be better, at least on that side deck. But
Okay.
I mean, if you guys don't
Okay.
like to mix materials, I'd be fine either way.
So far, I'm on board. Okay, so then we go to the side uncovered deck. That would also have wood railing to match the front porch.
Correct. Uh-huh.
In the back, the railing will be
Composite.
PVC?
Yeah, mm-hmm.
the railing,
Correct.
PVC.
Yeah, that's what's there now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got it. Next.
Was that another amendment then?
It would be if we're changing the material from
Oh.
wood to composite.
Okay.
So
Hey,
you would need to
you
consider
should
that as
ask-
well.
Ask for what you want.
Okay. Well, that assumes I know what I want from a day-to-day basis.
Just to note, we can cover this during the findings of fact. There's a page that says additional findings that you guys make. So the additional findings would say the applicant testified that she would like a cement front porch and composite decking throughout.
Okay.
I would cover that for when you guys are making your motion, just FYI.
But wood rails.
Wood railings in the front, all in the front wood
Composite
railings.
rails and back.
We
You
can
got it.
specify that when we adopt the
PVC.
findings.
But that,
Well,
this is part of the, this is part of the filing, and there are other things other than just adding words to it, that, because then they will be in conflict of some of the information that's on here.
That's what I'm trying to sort out.
Yeah, and I understand, and that's, and you're doing a wonderful job. I'm not arguing your job at all, but I'm becoming confused as to which part is where and how we're doing it, because
are you saying you need
we're
me to?
changing portions of this document, and then we're talking about adding things to it that are going to be different than some of the portions we change.
Let me suggest I kind of summarize, and Amy, you tell me if I'm wrong. Where I think Amy is now. The floor of all the decks,
Why don't we let her summarize what she wants?
Okay, it seems to be the changes are really just to flooring in the application. So I would like to change the application flooring for the covered porch area to concrete. from wood to concrete. I would like to change the flooring of the front deck, uncovered deck area, side deck, to composite instead of wood. Those are the two changes to the application. Everything else, I'm keeping the wood railings in the front. The back, the two decks off the back have always been composite materials. PVC railings, composite flooring, that's not changing.
You're adding brick.
One other little change, the
Oh, I'm
foundation.
sorry, the brick, sorry, yeah, the brick facing, excuse me, of the covered porch when it's concreted, yeah.
Okay. That's the way I understand it.
Yeah.
Okay, so next is windows. In your contractor's letter, he specifies a YKK window. Is that wrong?
It's wrong, we changed it to the gelled one,
Geldwin, okay, so under Geldwin, you're going to use the clad wood.
correct.
What about the muntins? Those are the little pieces of the window. Is it true divided light or simulated divided light or anything else?
Are you-
Say simulated divided light. and
Okay.
Make me answer.
Simulated.
Okay, okay. Okay, lastly, the lap siding, or I should say siding.
That's not,
The
yeah.
current house is
German lap,
gorgeous.
Beautiful,
It's a Dutch
yes.
lap siding. I'm sad to
Oh,
say
pardon.
they don't make that.
That's
Nietzsche
correct.
does not make that. However, there is a man-made product from Boral that they do make that.
oh,
So would be my suggestion that Boral Dutch lap would be a great replacement for what's there, and it would be man-made and last a long time and so on.
okay, I'm not familiar with that. No one's ever mentioned that product to me.
I think we need to be careful of making recommendations to the person proposing it. Our job is not to make recommendations.
Well, let me just say, the report did say there was going to be replacement with the same style, the Dutch or German lap.
The design, yeah. She's
Well,
gonna.
yeah, right.
So let me retract. I remove my suggestion,
Okay,
and I would say I would strongly favor a Dutch lap solution of
Okay.
your choosing.
But isn't that wasn't that proposed in here or no?
But it does say it like for like, but
Well,
she
it does in
says-
your report,
It
Peter.
does, the design is like for like, she's matching the existing
But she's
lap
the-
siding, but she's using a Nietzsche fiber cement material, which is a different material than the existing wood, and that's why she's here. If she was going back like for like, she wouldn't
Oh,
be
I thought
here.
it was with a Dutch lap, though, it said.
No, Nietzsche doesn't make a Dutch, that's the problem.
Oh,
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion here? We've had we've allowed the applicant to make two significant changes.
3.
May find that she wants to make further changes, and she has received very fine advice from a professional member of the commission in that regard. But that's not her change to make at this point. If at a later point she decides she wants to make a change, there are procedures through which she can do that, assuming her certificate of appropriateness has been approved, and Peter can undoubtedly advise her about the procedures to follow.
well, then
I'd
can I just
suggest that that's
ask
how
about a
we do
statement
it.
on page 12 that says, "The applicant has indicated the intent to match the existing Dutch lap siding design."
So she indicated that she'd match the existing design. I was not aware that Nietzsche fiber doesn't
Oh.
produce a Dutch lapping siding, but it's going to be very similar to what's there.
Sad to say, I would say that ordinary lap siding, which Nietzsche does make, for my vote, would not be matching the existing. I think the look of your existing Dutch lap really makes your house. It would be a significant difference. So if I vote based on some part of her application, which is inconsistent with another part of the application, how do I do?
You'd vote for either, you vote saying it is, or you vote saying it isn't.
Right.
You don't get to split vote.
We're getting into the construction issues again as opposed to aesthetics. And that's what we're supposed to be, is aesthetics,
But
not
yes
construction.
and no,
Now,
because
my question is which to believe.
in the record, it says, so are we going to correct that?
We
one
can
way?
correct the
Okay.
record to say that she's changing it to just lap siding.
Just lap, take out the Dutch.
Take out the Dutch, which is fine.
Okay.
And I'd like to reiterate that when we approve congruity, it's about the whole district. So what she's proposing is something that we see throughout the whole district of just lap siding.
Well, except to say, we're replacing like for like on,
And we can, we're going to do what Ann said and amend the staff report to reflect that it's not like for like. That was a mistake by staff. But what I'm saying is when we approve anything here, we're looking at, does it pass the congruity test? And what she's proposing would be similar to other structures within the historic district. If you're going to deny something,
But on page
you got to
6
deny because it's not consistent with the guidelines, and deny because it's not consistent with, or not congruous to the district. You would have to find reasoning within the guidelines to deny something, just if we were to deny something. That's all I'm saying is that we're looking at the congruity and consistency with the guidelines.
Pages 6 and 12 then. Right, I see.
I'll go ahead and amend that. Thank you.
And 9.
9, okay.
all right, so I'm going to spend some time finding something in the guidelines. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have any further questions?
No
Dave?
further questions. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have just a couple. So you're redoing the whole house, not just the parts where it's deteriorated? You're doing the whole house?
The whole house.
Okay.
Correct.
And then they're aluminum-clad wood windows, right? Because I
That's
see
correct.
a little conflict in the staff report and your application. And then just for Peter, what is the deck permit that's required, just out of curiosity, I guess?
So in this case, since she's not changing the footprint, there would be no deck permit required because she's not doing anything, but with the foundation, she may have to with that added piece. I'll have to consult with the building inspector.
With
'Cause
the brick? With the brick, you mean?
With the brick and the
Okay.
concrete, you're
Okay.
adding portions into it that's not a simple replacement anymore.
Gotcha,
There's
yeah.
maybe some requirements that I'm not aware of that you might have to meet.
Okay.
But that's outside of the purview of the commission.
Curious, since you mentioned it.
Any other questions of the witness, of the applicant? All right, thank you very much. And I take it there's no one else to be heard on this application. So therefore, it is now time for the commission to discuss. We don't deliberate until we have a motion. We're going to discuss.
Follow-up to the suggestion, I think, to find something in the guidelines which would make it incongruous. In exterior walls and trims on page 19, it says any changes or additions to exterior walls, such as windows, door openings, bays, vents, balconies, or chimneys, must be compatible with the architecture of the structure. And I would propose going from Dutch lap to ordinary lap would not be compatible with the architecture of the existing structure and would make it congruous accordingly.
What's the difference, to a layman, what's the difference between ordinary lap siding and Dutch lap siding?
We could look at there's a fairly good picture in the application of the Dutch lap, kind of a close-up one.
Yeah, it's like on an end shot.
The intricacy of where it
This
ties
is-
in and connects. It's a
How the
interlocking
how the
system.
boards lap. And the Dutch
There's a
lap
good
is-
one in there, Peter, right?
You're talking siding
You can see it right there on the bottom left corner, not over there, of the major pictures. See the ends of those boards?
I'm not sure if I'm,
How about this, David?
just so you know, none of this is getting on the record because you guys aren't near your mics.
Oh, we're just,
I was just letting you know.
it's fine. It's the picture indicated there of the main 6 pictures on that slide. The bottom left one, not the small ones over there, but the
one,
bottom
right?
left one show
Good.
the type of lap.
Ann has a good
Now
one.
it's on
This is a good representation, I think, of
Now, is that the current
Sherman.
That's
Yes.
the current.
situation? Okay, and
And see, it doesn't overlap, it kind of.
And one last. one
Sure,
to
There
look
go
you
at.
ahead.
Right there.
Front elevation, the one we've been looking at mostly. In the
Okay.
sun, to the right of the front porch. Is there any chance you can zoom in on that?
Which part?
Right of the front porch where the sun is on the siding, down, just to the right of the porch.
Just to the
Right
right.
where the number is, the house number?
Yeah, just above the
Right here?
ADT sign, yeah.
We're going to lose some quality.
That's as
Yeah.
good as it gets for what's in the application. So the face of the panels are all aligned, and there's this beautiful little scallop that goes up into the overlap.
It's a particular style.
All right, and so
Yes.
that feature would be lost, you're saying, because this is regular lap, will be replaced with regular lap siding rather
Right.
than, okay.
Right. Then the boards would just simply
Overlap.
overlap, and you'd have a shadow line, but none of that detail.
And your view is that that's less aesthetically pleasing?
My view, according to the guidelines, is, being careful to how I phrase this. Page 19, must be compatible with the architecture of the structure. Page 19 under B1.
That's a must.
Must, that's a must.
Page 19.
Must be compatible is not the same as must match.
You're not willing to
I'm-
look
I'm-
at
I'm-
the
Just
German?
hold on a second. Just want to, David, are you referring to page 19 of the guidelines?
Yeah, page 19.
What number?
Exterior walls and trim, number 1, B1.
Maybe I don't have the same numbering that you do. Oh, wait a minute, I've got.
I think you're there.
Yeah, this is, mine's 19, okay. Okay. Okay.
And we
All right,
got-
so David, in your view,
There it is, right there, on the screen.
sorry?
Right on the screen, highlighted.
Your view, the change in the nature of the siding is not compatible with the existing architecture and is not congruous with the character of the Pinehurst Historic District.
First half of that is my contention.
First half, okay, thank you.
We've made a lot of changes to this thing.
We haven't.
Well, she has,
Okay.
right. You're right, thank you for correcting.
I'm not
me. You're
requesting
absolutely
this
correct.
change,
We
by the
have
way.
not made any changes. She has chosen to make changes to it. And I think I would propose possibly continuing this and allowing the applicant to go back and look at how those changes fit into and take into consideration anything she's heard here tonight to make adjustments for this. Because if, and I may be stepping a little bit far out here, but if we find it not congruous, and then you come back, you would have to come back with another whole package.
Oh, that's not happening because that's another $500.
That's my point. That's what I'm getting at.
You all
So-
have to be sensitive to that, please.
Okay, that's what I was trying to be without
Yeah.
probably saying it too loudly.
Okay.
But
Appreciate
so if we allow the package to go back and taking what you've heard tonight, along with making the changes that you have proposed physically in the package, so that we have a complete record and a complete style to it, may be something we want to introduce. And this commission has done that before in multiple cases where there have been changes made by the applicant and or additional information that may be needed. So that may be something we can look at.
Okay. I don't know if you're able to tell me. My biggest concern about whether this would be a whole flop, if the contingency is that I use the Dutch lap style, would be my budget, obviously. And I doubt it's the same price.
But see, that way you would have a chance
So-
of taking a look at those things.
So the other option would be that I don't do any of this work? You'd rather my house look deteriorated? That would be the other option?
No?
Okay, so if I come back to you and I say, Dutch lap is twice as much the price that I was quoted by my contractor, it's out of my budget? My house is gonna stay as is, falling
Dutch
apart?
lap in the front?
No.
What about
We
the
do-
front?
We're not here to provide either legal or architectural advice normally. Just procedurally, you could come in and say what you just said. I'd like to change it to such and such, as Mr. Herring has suggested. However, it's too expensive, and I therefore propose to use the less expensive product. We would then have to decide that whether the application as so amended is congruous with the historic district. And we could decide that either way. And you would not know until we voted what we thought about it.
This just gives you an opportunity to go back and look at all of this stuff, the changes that you've made, look at those, how they integrate into the package, because I think there are other spaces in that package where just saying what you've said, and I'm not making any ruling on it, or I don't believe the commission is at all, but would give you an opportunity to relook at the changes that you made tonight, along with anything else that you've heard, and come back with a clarified package.
Yeah, I don't need to relook at the other changes I requested, and I can tell you already, I just texted my contractor, absolutely not the same price, has to be milled to match. So he's going to check with me, but sure, I will. But
Work with Peter.
I have a feeling it's going to be out of my price range. I'm already tapped with what this is going to cost me.
So, Peter, I have a question. In your remarks, you say that relative to the lap siding, that the applicant intends to match the design of the existing lap siding. Is that erroneous?
It is erroneous because I considered lap siding, whether it be Dutch lap siding or lap siding, to be the same. So I would need to amend that to say.
We might so consider it. I mean, that's not necessarily an error, but it's
That was my
distinction
interpretation
that we
is that
hadn't known about until now.
lap siding is, obviously, there's minute differences between everything.
This, I mean,
We would see
this
a
hardy
difference.
plank is used up and down my street in other homes of this age, so, I mean, that's also why I'm not sure.
I have to point out, I have only one vote. You can roll the dice and let us vote.
No, I
Rolling
mean,
the dice is the right
because
answer.
rolling the dice and letting you vote, and it sounds like you're not the only one that doesn't like this application, let's be honest, that's been pretty clear. It sounds like it won't get approved, and then in which case I would have to reapply with these changes. So if you're giving me the opportunity to step away for a month, make the needed changes, the ones that I want, as well as investigate the recommendations of the one additional change to the side of the lap, I would obviously want to take that one.
Peter, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Is there a mechanism by which we could review her reapplication more quickly than costing her another month?
We would have to convene a special meeting.
Well, if she said a month, we could come up the next month then.
We could,
Yeah.
at the next hearing, regularly
It won't
scheduled.
take me a month to get this information, though, so if there is an expedited way for you to review,
All right, let me
I would
ask
appreciate that.
for a motion. I'd like to have a motion that we continue this proceeding and reschedule the hearing as expeditiously as possible after the applicant has considered the issues that we've been discussing. Have a motion to that effect?
I'll make one. As to the matter of COA 2020-00123, I make a motion.
Tom, when we continue something, we have to announce it, because by continuing it, we've already noticed, and if we don't specify a specific time and place, I have to renotice.
Which is fine, and if I can go on with the motion, I think we'll make it that way.
Just for discussion purposes, I think everything that the applicant has proposed is on the property already, other than the siding. For me, architecturally looking at this, call it a bungalow as a whole, this style of house is in brick, this style of house is in board and batten, this style of house is in German lap siding, this style, multiple different exterior finishes to produce this kind of style of house. I've got enough here for me to make an educated decision for myself on congruity within the village. That sounds like it's not enough for everyone here, so I won't be on board with the motion because I'd like to handle this today. That's my place, because I understand the
And again,
concrete patio, the brick, it's all on the property already. It's on the side of the house, on the back of the house. If we could walk the applicant through being a little more descriptive in what they give us, there's enough here for me.
I agree with you. I take that position. If you hadn't said it, I would have.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let me suggest this. Tom, make your motion. If the motion is granted, then we know what's going to happen. If the motion is denied, for the reasons that Richard and Terry have just said, then we'll proceed with the application as it is. Well, he hasn't made.
I haven't made the motion yet. I got caught about the third word into it, and that's how far as I got.
Go ahead, Tom.
There was no motion there.
He has
My
made.
suggestion is, why don't we move to what Richard said, to approve it as amended?
Well, because I, as the chairman, asked for a particular motion, and as a chairman, I have the right to do that. So I've asked for a motion. Tom has indicated he would make the motion, and we can vote on the motion.
And if, just to run out both scenarios, if we postpone it, she can come back without any additional fees. If it goes up and it doesn't pass, then she has to come back and pay a second fee, which it sounded like from what she was saying, she would just as soon not have to do. So I'm not saying it's going to pass. I'm not going to say it's not going to pass. Those are the two options. So, Mr. Chair, you still want the motion
Yes,
that
I
you
do.
asked for? Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Any other discussion before I start?
Well,
Okay.
this just, before you do, I mean,
Okay,
a little more
please.
discussion before you move. This is one of these musts again, and what is the justification? Is it cost, I guess? Is that what we're going to say? Or is it Congress? I mean, because that Dutch lap siding is rather unique in Pinehurst. I've never, I don't know, does it exist elsewhere? But it seems to be in the older houses here, and you have a lovely house, and that German siding is, when I go by it, I think, oh, there's that German siding. It's pretty. I mean, it's just, it's even listed, you know, it's described that way as a contributing property. So you're taking that feature away from the history of your home. So that's what bothers me, is the must and how we're going to justify it on procedural grounds, as always.
But if I could get the German and match it exactly, which I can't, right, is what you were saying. That's
Oh,
my
I'm not saying
understanding.
that. No, not saying
Well.
that you can't match it. I'm not
But
allowed
that,
to give you
yeah.
advice, but I'm not saying that.
Well, that's, I mean, I know I could get the wood German milled down board by board, but I'm not doing that, yeah. That's
Okay.
a cost issue for sure. Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
Any other discussion before I start my motion? I just want to make sure that everybody's had their opportunity. Thank you.
Well, one more thing. No, just kidding, I'm just kidding. Mr. Chair.
All right, let's see if I can do this. I move that as to the matter of COA 2020-00123, that we adjourn, or what's the word we use?
Continue, I think.
Continue this proceeding until such time as the applicant has time to make the corrections that she so wishes and to review the issues that have been brought up that may have impact upon her decisions, and that it be replaced on the calendar at the earliest possible time, taking into consideration the fact that we do have to repost and we do have to re-notify and do the other things as well. So it may, if you get it, it may be up to a month, I would think, to be able to do that.
That's the motion. Is there a second?
Just before you vote on that, the motion has to be very specific when you continue something. It has to be a date, so a specific date, like 9/24.
When's our next meeting?
At 4 p.m. The next meeting would be October 22nd, I believe.
Okay, then I'm going to modify my motion on my own.
But that would alleviate her ability to come sooner is my issue. So it's going back to his, you know, if we're comfortable with postponing it a month, that's fine. I just
Time
want to
of
make
the
sure that
essence.
her request for an expedited process would not be able to be achieved once we make the motion.
My motion was that at the earliest possible time, and if that is 1 month, okay, I'll modify the motion. No. So I'm going to restate the motion. I'll retract what I've said, I'm going to restate the motion. As to the matter of COA 2020-00123, I move that we continue this matter until
October 22nd,
October 22nd,
4 p.m. Village
2020,
Assembly Hall.
at 4 p.m. in this very location.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Let's, any further discussion? All in,
Can't make it 2 weeks from now.
We
don't know
could,
that
but
she'll
I
be
have
ready.
to make sure
We
that I
don't
can
know
schedule
that
the
she'll be
meeting, and I
ready
don't know
2
if I
weeks from
can.
Not with postings and stuff, it's unlikely.
Is it possible to, a few days from now, we have a chance to check everybody's calendar.
It's not just that, it's also the meeting room.
For
So-
notice.
So there's more at play than just saying, let's meet now. I have to make sure that this is available. Right now,
Oh,
we have some
understand.
internal issues with this
yeah.
room and other rooms because of what our organization's doing for Baldridge. So
I
there's not
guess-
a lot of availability this month.
What I'm about to say would be that, should you run all those hurdles and discover there's an earlier date available, is it possible to do that?
The motion is on the table,
we're
and I
having-
called a question on the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. Question has been called. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that,
For the record, can we do a roll call for Kelly's benefit?
I think so.
Apologies.
all right, all in favor? We'll do a roll call. Richard?
No.
Tom?
Yes.
Eric, yes.
And yes.
Yes.
Matter has been
Continued
continued.
until October 22nd at
October
4 p.m. in
22nd.
Assembly Hall.
A preferred manufacturer for that material you've recommended?
Am I allowed to say anything?
You are not,
Why don't we take a short recess?
Do you need to use the restroom, sir?
Let's take a 5-minute recess, and you and
Who talks
the
to who?
An architect.
applicant would like to.
just so we're clear, that would be ex parte communication.
Correct, it would.
But I can go walk back there and reiterate what the material was stated on the record. That way you have that information. And I can also follow up with an email so you have the specific information for later use.
Thank you.
Would that be helpful?
That would be very helpful.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Regard this as an ex parte communication, because the communication's already been made on the record. This is trying
That's
to
true.
clarify these technicalities.
Okay, so 5 minutes?
Yes, 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Turn off your mic.
All right. Mr. Wiltshire? Before you sit down, will you stand up, raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission in this proceeding shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Robert Wiltshire.
Okay, thank you. And make sure you speak into that microphone because we need to be able to get it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Peter, can you present the application?
Yes, sir. This public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for the demolition of a primary structure within the Historic District at 125 Kelly Road. The property can be identified in Moore County Tax Registry by Moore County PIN number 856-205-089-506. The property owner and applicant is Robert Wiltshire. This was a photo taken by staff for the February 2020 meeting. Mr. Wiltshire entered it into the record for use today. One major COA and 0 minor COAs have been granted for 125 Kelly Road. As previously stated in February of 2020, a major COA was granted for multiple exterior modifications, which included the addition to the rear and front of the structure, the removal of front porch, and the resurfacing of the stucco siding. According to the National Historic Landmark Survey, the primary structure at 125 Kelly is non-contributing, and none of the adjacent properties are contributing. This is a list of the properties that were notified. As you can see, none of the notified properties are contributing structures, and most of them were built after 1950. This is a notification map of the properties notified. In total, there were 6 properties notified. In addition to that, there was the applicant themselves that was notified. This request is before the commission because the demolition of a historic structure greater than 120 square feet is considered major work. And according to our PDO, an application for a certificate of appropriateness authorizing the demolition, removal, or destruction or building structure or site within the historic district may not be denied. The only thing that the commission may do is delay the demolition. This was the site plan submitted at the last February 2020, and Mr. Wiltshire included it again into the record for this submission. As you can see, the structure was a non-contributing structure located close to the property line and set far into the interior of the lot. Here's a zoomed-in version of that so we can see with clarity. It was 4 feet off the side property line, and it was approximately 15,000 square foot lot. Once again, this is the front elevation photo of 125 Kelly, and here it is zoomed in. Later on, we're going to be talking about a crack that you can kind of see currently in the exterior of the home here. This is a crack that has become a structural issue for Mr. Wiltshire. This is the left elevation of the home. This is the rear elevation of the home. Both photos were from the 2020 February meeting. This was the existing elevation submitted for that meeting for the record, part of the historical documentation for this case. This is the existing floor plan, which is also included for the historical documentation of this case. And then Mr. Wiltshire provided additional material, which he'll present on later, but I'll cover briefly about the structural issues. Here we see that the 81-inch head height from floor to ceiling is a structural issue, and then once again we see these cracked wall that was shown on the previous one when the porch was still attached. Here we're talking about the centers being an issue. You need to be a minimum of 7 feet, and the headers at the size that they have to be would not permit that. Here again, we see more interior cracking of the wall, which is creating structural issues. And here we see that the floor has been taken out by the construction. And in his process of taking that out, he discovered that there was no concrete footing. The mortar was between the block, but not in the cells, and the foundation trench was blocked, causing additional structural issues to the structure. This is the material that was submitted, our material list submitted at the last meeting. This includes a historical record of what was existing so that we know for the record. At this time, staff would like to submit the following into the record: staff report, presentation, application, applicant's material, photo, site plans, and findings of fact.
Thank you, Peter. Do any of the members of the commission have any questions for Mr. Hughes? If not, Mr. Wiltshire, thank you for being here. As I think you know, we have a very narrow role to play in approving your request for demolition. It's a sad story, but we cannot deny you a request for demolition. We can delay it if there's reason for us to do so. And so if you have any reasons to suggest that we allow you to proceed as expeditiously as you can, that would probably be a good way to address the issue.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time, and thank y'all for letting me come back and see you for a second time. It's been interesting since we got started. So you guys approved us for improvements in February. We got started, COVID shut everything down, so it's been a long time coming getting to this point. Once we got everything out, executing the plan that we had approved prior, pretty much every contractor and city inspector we talked to said it was going to be nearly impossible to safely get this structure up to code without having any concrete footers, with the 2x6s being on 24-inch centers. It's a 14-foot span as well, so there's pretty significant sagging floor issue. Once we got that addressed, we realized that it pretty much made the entire second floor unusable due to not having enough headspace, so it would be like a 6-foot ceiling. It also was not going to meet code to be able to get it re-insulated, and that was going to take me down to about 5 feet of usable space. So like a kid's playroom area, maybe. So looking at multiple different options with Builder's Source, we had decided to go a more expensive route and change the roof line, and we were going to come back and request that as well until the city inspector came back and said that that much weight's probably going to collapse those walls, that there's no concrete in them. They didn't put any rebar in them, so the things that they could get away with in the 50s when the structure was built obviously won't hold the weight today. So after a lot of gnashing of teeth and talking to multiple contractors and engineers about how we could salvage the structure and keep the existing footprint because it's been there so long, I think the best course of action that everybody came up with that Peter would allow me to even consider doing without running afoul of this commission is to probably remove the structure. And I think we're probably just going to end up sell the lot to a builder or someone who wants to live in the area. We've decided to homeschool the kids, so it's kind of a wasted school spot for somebody that actually wants to live next to the school. So for us, it just doesn't play out very well as far as, you know, the time, money equation to be in that area. So it is a sad story.
And I take it you want to proceed as quickly as possible to do the demolition?
Yes, sir.
Our regulations direct that an applicant in this kind of case shall submit to the village staff a record of the primary structure that describes any distinctive architectural features of the structure, important landscape features, and any archaeological significance of the site. Have you provided that information to the village staff?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Questions from the commission?
Comment, I think if those walls won't hold the weight of extending the structure up, I seriously doubt they would hold together to even consider moving the whole structure.
No, sir.
All right. No further questions of the applicant. Is there discussion among the members of the commission? In that case, someone like to make a motion? I can do that. Barry?
Upon due consideration of the application package and the testimony given.
Terry, your mic is off. Your mic is off. Thank you, sir.
Start over?
Yes, sir.
Please, okay. Upon due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion and the project as proposed, submitted without conditions, is congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District and consistent with historic district guidelines.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Really congruous?
We can discuss that later.
Okay.
About to be.
All right. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. That's unanimous. Thank you. You have your
Thank you all for your time.
demolition approval.
No restrictions.
Or the better.
Yeah, before it falls on your head.
All right. That concludes our caseload for today. Would someone make a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
We need to go over the staff approvals real quick, if you guys have any questions.
Sorry.
Yeah, just if you guys have no
Oh, is that-
issue with the minor COAs, there was a fence approved, minor adjustments to a previously approved, another fence, a deck permit, and I believe an accessory structure for Mr. Sabine.
I'm sorry, what did you say about the minor change?
We just need to go over them for the record.
Oh.
Just so that way, if you guys have any questions, I can answer.
Oh,
them.
yeah. So what was the minor change?
The minor change, which one? 41 Shaw? Garage doors.
Garage doors?
Yeah. The garage doors were proposed not to have windows, and they ended up having windows, so that was a minor approval by staff.
All right,
Now we make
now
a
motion
motion?
to close the
Now you
public
can close it,
hearing.
yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The next meeting date will be
October 22nd.
22nd, is it? Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passed.
Motion
We have
to enter
some
the regular
work-
meeting.
Work session to follow.
Yeah. All right. So in your guys' packets, we included some potential updates to the Historic District guidelines. We discussed these at our last work session, and you guys gave me great feedback, and I turned those into red line changes for your review. So if we could turn to that, if you guys have any comments, would like to discuss any specific ones, now's the time. On the wrong one.
Well, you obviously deleted guidelines and added standards all along.
Yes, so according to Chapter 160D, under our current legislation, we're under 160A, but it's switching to 160D. Historic district guidelines must change to standards, because standards are requirements in law, and guidelines are suggestions. So that's just a change in verbiage. That was
So page 5, you deleted guidelines, but you didn't add standards.
page 5, okay.
Incidentally, I think that's a good change. I think what we are trying to do here is more fittingly described as standards than guidelines. On page 6, Q6A, where it says we conduct hearings and, by conducting hearings and, should say, making findings of fact. You don't conduct findings of fact.
Can you help me out and direct me a little bit better where we're at?
Page 6, question 6,
Okay.
paragraph A, second line. So by conducting hearings and making findings of fact, making should be inserted.
Fence and the height change?
We did. It was in reference to 605 Linden Road, where a gentleman had to come in for a 6-foot height approval, and so that was kind of spurred on.
But it wasn't
by that.
visible from the road, right?
It wasn't visible from the road, correct.
But so now you're changing the standard, right?
So this one would be entirely in the rear, I believe, for.
Oh, it is?
For solid wood fencing, and then 6 foot for the sides as well. The staff reason for that is we believe that disjointed looking fences create an issue. Not only that, but there's plenty of 6-foot fences already existing in the historic district. So if someone came in and took photos and showed there's 23 properties with 6-foot fences, you know.
Well, so then why was it 4?
I don't have the background on that. The stories that I've been told is that the revision committee, our rewrite committee, was very into fences, and they wanted to regulate it in that way. There was no specific reason that was given. They just said we want 4 feet.
So we're being reeled in as not independent now? We're going along with 6?
No, I just want to make it consistent with the rest of the PDO. Outside the historic district, we allow for 6-foot fences. So, you know, it's not a permanent structure technically, so it could come down. You know, I'm not advocating that we allow 6-foot fences in the front. I'm not saying we should do solid wood fences. I'm only saying solid wood fences in the rear yard.
But how much workload does this add if it remains?
If it remains.
Yeah.
It doesn't add workload from the standpoint of coming to you guys a lot. I just think that a lot of people get upset that they can't have a 6-foot fence in their side yard when everybody else a mile outside of them can. They don't really understand the arbitrary reason for it.
Well, it's called the historic
Start out with,
district.
it's not arbitrary.
Yeah.
Well,
Could be arguably not to be arbitrary. If you want to make the arbitrary argument.
I just get a lot of
things in
pushback
here.
on it, and, people comply for sure. It's not any more staff work, it's just, if someone wanted something 49 inches, they have to come before you guys. If you don't want that change, I have no problem taking it out. It's just been something that,
I'll be curious to hear if others care.
I personally have no objection to the change. I would note that the illustration needs to be amended
as well.
to it,
Yeah.
but I have no objection to the change.
So if I understand the change correctly, then it is a change that says as long as they can be 6 foot, as long as they are not visible from the street.
We can add that language in, but
I'm not recommending, but what,
that would be difficult because a lot of side yards would be visible in some way because the side yard is measured from the front facade back.
yeah, I think we're still there, because if I use my own house, which is not in the historical district, so it's a good one to use, if you look down the side of my house, part of my back fence goes beyond the ends of the house. So I think we need to be careful how, and this was one of the big issues that we had when we did the rewrite too, is how you look at fences, because, so my question is, my back fence is, some of it is would be visible from the street, but it is truly the back fence to the property. So that would mean, if I understood the way this was written, that was directly behind my house could be 6 foot, but the same fence then that went beyond the end of my house would then have to come down to something less than 6 foot.
Right. The current, as I understand it, that's the effect of the current, well, it's now a guideline. I don't have any objection to the change. But, Ann, do you?
I just don't know how often it comes up as an issue that, it's a burden that were carefully considered at some point. I'm just wondering why.
Alex is going to add some perspective.
Okay?
Okay.
If I may.
You were the one that suffered through more of this than I did.
I did, but it was, and suffer may not be, there was a lot of time and a lot of effort, and a lot of folks did place a lot of time. So to your credit, Ann, this number was, of a 4-foot height limitation was placed there for a reason and was ultimately adopted by Village Council. And that doesn't mean we're held to that, in perpetuity. We can come to it. I think Peter made a good point, and I'm sorry for my presence and then leaving and then back. The committee at the time, I think the main intent and a lot of the language and discussions we had was that a lot of the newer homes that were being built in the historic district, so this was more in the neighborhood near the elementary school, not picking on you, Richard, because I think Richard did do a 4-foot fence, if I'm not mistaken, for a lot of his property. In the back, that's right. Because Richard, too, benefits from having a double street frontage lot. So it was a lot of you driving down the street front, and these folks having a front yard and then having 6 foot of fence that's almost acting like another wall there that just kind of slaps you in the face. So I think they wanted to be able to have less visual obstruction to the back corner. So I think that's where they grabbed to 4 feet, and 3.5 in order to keep it consistent with the front was probably not enough if you need to have, containment for dogs or children. What we as staff have discussed, and the reason why we are kind of presenting this change to you guys is, Peter hit the nail on the head when he says there are tons of 6-foot tall side yard fencing. So I think there probably could be something, some middle road that we can all get at if 4 feet is maybe something important to a lot of folks, and maybe ultimately maybe important to Village Council when considering any adopted changes. But it would be very problematic for a lot of folks who have a 6-foot side yard fence currently And we know fencing needs repairs a little bit more often than a permanent structure. You know, folks need to come and get a new fence or get it, if there's a repair or maintenance that's going to be greater to 50% of the size or the cost at the time, then they're going to have to be knocked down to 4 feet or have to come to you guys and for a major COA review and plead a case. You know, it may be an easy case to plead by just a photographic evidence. I have a 6-foot fence now. How is that not congruous with the historic district? So I think it could actually have a ripple effect, and it kind of has in some instances, and it reflects the requirements that are in the Pinehurst Development Ordinance now for side yard fencing. One way to maybe mitigate having that visible obstruction there from the road is to have a setback, like side yard fences that are greater than 4 feet in height must be set back so many feet from the front facade. That way, if you're looking from the street side, also, you know, street side or street facing fencing, previous guidelines limited to a certain type. So, like, I understand that solid wood fencing are not allowed or not permitted by these guidelines. I know there's another red line or addition there you'll see for, I think for commercial. Is that right, Peter?
No, I just said rear yard.
Okay, so just in the rear yard. So, you know, white wooden picket fencing and brick fencing were previously the only permitted street-facing types. You know, they have a little more open visual character. So I think there's something that we can probably work on with you guys and hear your feedback on, you know, maybe not just 6 feet complete in the side and rear yard, maybe it's a certain type, maybe there's a setback. If you're thinking that there might be just a visually overpowering to allow for a 6-foot fence, but there are very, very many. I don't think we have to tell you guys, you know, going around in the area and with the vastness of our district. But we do feel as staff that it also creates somewhat of a level of incongruity when you have a 3.5 to a 4 and then to a 6, you know, from other visual aspects. It may, again, it may just create an incongruity. There's unintended consequences probably to that. You know, keeping a 4-foot requirement period would be better as far as, you know, continuity from the side to the rear yard, but then how many rear yard fences are already 6 feet in height? So again, that's kind of the reason in the background and why we've kind of worked together, and I didn't want Peter to have to fall on that sword by himself and presenting that proposed change. So we're open to hearing what you guys think as far as that requirement is.
What would be like a setback requirement that you would?
Could be two things. It could be distance setback, or it could be like half the distance of the side of the house. I mean, you could come at it for a couple of approaches.
And coming at something, an objective standard would be great, since fencing is in large a staff level approval. You know, there's, most fencing doesn't rise to the level of a major work. You know, you're either going to be talking, or you as a commission are probably going to be reviewing either A, a type, or B, the location or height. So, to Tom's point, I think previously, and it's probably not enough, maybe if you're really worried about, again, the solid wood fencing isn't allowed, so consider what are your allowable fence types on the residential properties. The previous setback was a foot. So if you're doing something greater than 4 feet in height in the side yard, you had to be set back a foot from the front corner of the front facade of the building. So a foot is maybe not that much if you're talking about like a shadow box style fencing. So maybe you could say that shadow box fencing, you know, is have to be limited to 4 feet in height in the side yard. Picket fencing is pretty well limited to 4 feet anyway. So there's, you know, half the distance of the facade may help. There again, though, you may run on some properties that have some, their side yard design is a little bit different. So, you know, there's some mature vegetation there they want to keep or incorporate in. That's could again be an easy argument for a case before the Historic Preservation Commission. But
regarding people who already have fences and find themselves in a position to either repair or replace, could we not say in effect that that any new restriction like a setback halfway back the side yard does not apply for repair and replacement?
There's probably the opportunity to place some language in there that replacement of existing side yard fencing greater than 4 feet in height can be replaced as long as the height is not,
Same as existing?
yes, as long as the type and the height don't change. There's a potential possibility for crafting some language like that. I think that's something that Peter and I or other staff can easily say, hey, you've got a shadow box fence now, you can have another 6-foot shadow box fence as it's needed to be replaced. One thing to carefully consider too is the language that we just looked at with the solid wood fencing. There's a lot of solid wood fencing in the historic district as well. And that the change with the guidelines you're operating under now was a knee-jerk reaction to a recent change in the Pinehurst Development Ordinance that started allowing for solid wood fencing again, when previously the development ordinance didn't allow for it. So the historic guidelines didn't have to speak to it. But I can tell you, once that PDO was changed, and in the meantime, before the standards and guidelines is what they referred to at the time in the historic district were updated to this, staff and myself issued permits in the historic district for solid wood fencing, and a lot of it was replacement of solid wood fencing, a complete replacement, because it had gotten in disrepair. You'll see a lot of them there along the back of alleyways. So I think a plausible change is to allow it in the rear yard only, and therefore you're still able to protect, having a 4-foot or a 6-foot tall solid wood fence in the side yard. And you got to consider some of the homes and the layouts in the historic district because of the curvilinear streets. There's, not everything has a clear front, side, and rear. So it's a challenge.
It's almost a case by case, and I hate to say that, but it's almost, you have to look at it. I mean, because you take some of the house, and what I'm thinking of right now is this being modified sits right on a corner, and the other corner is an alleyway. Now, do you consider the alleyway a street? Is it on the front or is it on the back? I mean, they interpret, and this is one of the big things that we had a lot of discussion about, because every time somebody thought they had the wording nailed down to what they wanted, somebody would come along and say, well, this, such as the question that I asked, if you do it from street facing, then if it's done to be on my house, I can see it, so I then have to have 6 foot directly behind my house and down to 4 foot afterwards if I were in the do it. So it becomes, it's not a clear, and they spent hours and days probably trying to pin down some wording that would basically, I think as Alex had said, which was the idea was to keep the fence in the front because it was historic so you could see the house. That's the purpose of having the historic house. You didn't want a 6 foot fence up there because basically then you couldn't see the house if you're walking by, or probably even more so driving by. So they wanted the fences from the observation perspective to be lower. But wording that is a huge challenge because of all of the different arrangements to that, because every time we'd find what we thought was the right wording, somebody'd come up and say, well, here's another situation that wording doesn't apply to.
Tom, following up on what you just said, I understand why we want to keep the front yard fences low. Why do we care about the side yard fence? What's the public policy issue?
Well, I think if you think about it, if you bring the side yard all the way up to basically the sidewalk, or the front, I guess they can't go in front of the PDO, they can't go in front of the front facade, right?
Correct. It would stop there at that corner.
Would stop at that point. The next house may set farther back in, so you'd be sheltering some of that view from as well. So again, it becomes a really...
Also, Eric, that from an architectural standpoint, it's not a two-dimensional structure. We perceive these houses as we're driving and walking by them in 3 dimensions. As you approach, you see a side and a front.
Right.
Reminds me only of bad subdivisions where houses have brick on the front and plastic on the side.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
The corners make the volume of the house understandable. So if we cover up that corner by bringing the tall fence forward to the front corner, we lose that.
So that would be a rationale for continuing the existing rule. Yeah, I find
Can
that.
you put up the existing rule again? Just so we can all look at it the same.
Is that big enough for everybody?
So we're talking about 11A, right? There we go. The front yard fence must not be taller than 3.5 feet in height. Side yard fences must not be taller than 6 feet in height, and rear yard fences must not be taller than 6 feet in height. So you kind of got to reword, I think, the statement. You're doing 6 and 6, the and needs to go away.
I would reword it differently, but I felt like doing the red line this way would kind of show the change better.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm kind of
What's the rationale for changing the side number? What's the rationale?
Rationale?
Pardon?
I have residents who are taking that 50% rule to heart, and they're doing 40% replacements.
Like Tom said, you can keep it all the way to the sidewalk.
Well,
Can't come below, the PDO won't let you come forward to the front facade.
so the defined front yard is your furthest protrusion forward, and the side yard is between the furthest protrusion forward and the rear of the structure. So this area right here where my cursor is, that's the side yard. This is the side yard. Everything up here where the driveway is considered the front yard.
And in most times, when you're talking about the design of most of and the layout of most of the homes in the historic district, the span of the side yard, of course, not every one of them are as cookie cutter and perfect as the diagram there in front of us. So you're talking about, you may have a span of a requirement of a 4-foot fence for 30 feet. Because the way we define front yard and rear yard is by the furthest protrusion that is shown on that diagram of the front facade, and then the furthest protrusion of the rear yard by the rear facade, so then everything else is inherently side yard. And there are protections in the PDO for side street setbacks, so if you're a corner lot, you're not putting a 6-foot fence all the way to the edge of the right-of-way. You'll have to have a 10-foot setback there. And if your rear yard abuts a defined front yard, you're going to be capped at 4 feet anyway. So there's other protections. We're not just throwing something saying, hey, everyone in the historic district needs to have a 6-foot side yard fence too. There's other limitations that you guys don't have to check, that planning staff get to check. 10 foot would 10 foot of a side yard, a 6-foot side yard fence setback be enough? Maybe, to David's point, and there's a section in there that talks about a non-conforming fence to the historic guidelines. Do we basically give a blanket exception for those who are currently existing and say, if you're going to replace, you can replace in its entirety even if it doesn't meet the current guidelines, because you've been inherently congruent since the enaction of the historic district in 2006, so you can kind of keep that. Now, the new property owner that moves in and builds a new house after they've got approval to demolish one or finds another infill lot, they're not afforded that same. So that becomes difficult. Then why am I impacted differently? Just because, well, there's the congruity, or they can make that case before you.
But that follows the same thing in any zoning in nature. I get, if I have a grandfather clause, and I have a fence built because it was built that way before the zoning changed, et cetera, that's good until when? In perpetuity? I mean, that's good as long as the land is there?
Usually.
It should be valid for as long as the fence exists. As soon as somebody
And as
tears
soon
it
as you,
down,
That's what it says.
Yeah, but you're not going to hit a case, because no one's going to come and no one's going to replace it. Everything's going to be repaired. So
Right.
what this does is put people away as opposed to complying and coming before us in a transparent form.
I'm sorry, but if they take the avenue that Peter mentioned and what Richard's discussing now, we don't even require a permit.
Yeah, you can just go do it.
Exactly. So we don't have that opportunity in
I
the
think
village.
anything we do that encourages people not to maintain their fence is a mistake.
Well, we're not discouraging them to maintain the fence.
By virtue of saying if you repair it, more than 50%.
They'll piecemeal it. They'll do a section at a time.
I'll do one section, wait a couple of months and do another section.
You create a circumvention. Yeah.
You're keeping a gateway for people to go and sort of find it. The setback piece, my 2 cents, is I wouldn't be a proponent of that, because for me, when I put up a fence, I did it based on where the tree roots are and avoiding cutting down trees. And I think what you have is, if you have 10 feet or 5 feet, a lot of the time people enjoy trees on the property, and you have big mature trees, and you get that root, that stump growing, or whatever you're using to get there, you're gonna take down the tree. I think you leave it as is, and again, if someone has to come back and repair a fence or replace the fence and move it 2 feet inside, then they're just not gonna replace it, they're just gonna repair it. You're not even gonna see, so I think it's another way to deter them from coming forward. I have no issue with the 6, so I think the only lots would really affect you on where you would visually see it, and it would be aesthetically pleasing, would be really corner lots.
And the PD already protects against that.
Well, not just corner lot, though, because I think as David was saying, some houses, I'm thinking of mine. I mean, I'm, ahead of the house beside me, and if, their side yard could come up pretty far, or vice versa, right? So,
So there's protection against that
Huh?
too.
There's always going to be exceptions to it.
There's
well,
pro-
that's what I'm saying. I mean, it isn't cookie cutter, that's so.
It never
PDO
has been.
protects against that though.
Pinehurst.
When you abut another person's front yard, you're limited to 4 feet anyways.
Sorry?
So this is just allowing people to have a 6-foot fence when they can. There's other protections that would still limit the fence height.
So when you abut someone else's land, you can't do this.
If you abut someone's defined front
Front yard.
So like if you're sitting in your front porch in your neighbor's rear yard.
That's a PDO?
Yes.
Well, could that be put into could we modify this?
It's
same way?
probably not necessary, but you could.
Well, just so that when people are looking at the historic, because they may not be looking at the whole PDO, right?
Oh, yeah,
They
Oh, I know
have
you
to.
do, I know you do, but
yeah.
an applicant here is
But
just,
the only caution I would do would recommend if you do start taking PDO information, and we discussed this quite a bit too during the other, if you start taking information out of the PDO and you put it into ours, then they go back and change the PDO. There's no real mechanism to change ours. So you're kind of stuck.
but that's a good thing, as far as I'm concerned then.
It may or may not be.
Well, in this case, it is.
And what this commission can do, because the avenue and the process to change this document versus change the PDO are vastly different. Is as long as it's in the PDO now, we're covered.
Right.
You've got to check that box before anyone can consider getting a COA by staff or by the commission. If the PDO process begins to be amended, then we can always recommend fixing this guideline, and this process is faster than the other.
I would advocate including that restriction and qualification.
Noted.
Vote would be to leave it alone.
I'd go that way too.
All right, any further discussion of that issue? Can I go back to page 32?
Did you get an answer that you needed?
No, but that's okay.
Okay.
Item 8 on page 32, saying it's not appropriate to paint a brick surface previously painted.
Why is that? I don't understand that.
Oh, that was my question. What's the policy rationale for the
Can't
existing
recall.
rule?
So I guess I'm the historian on that.
Alex, that's you, man.
Yeah, so there was heavy discussion on this matter. I think some of the commission members at the time weren't very fond of staff approvals that were allowing painting of brick surfaces because they didn't think it was appropriate. In some instances, it was brick fencing. In some instances, it was original brick homes. Again, a lot of it was in the elementary school neighborhood area. They felt it was inappropriate, and this is also language that is quite common in other historic district guidelines, like the city of Greensboro. The committee did look at a lot of other jurisdictions' guidelines and, found a lot of stuff that they like and thought it could and should apply with the Village of Pinehurst. I've not heard too much issue with this guideline since it was adopted. I'm trying to think of how much unpainted brick may become painted. Was painted brick an issue?
The only case would be the last one in my tenure, which would be 190 Linden painting their foundation white to match the
And
siding.
I think there's some leeway in there anyway, because it's masonry elements and terracotta surfaces that contribute to the character of the structure should not be painted. Painting of brick surfaces is not appropriate unless the surface was previously painted. Maybe we need to do it. If you take the first sentence in conjunction with the second one, that's where I think you get into a question. If it doesn't change the character, if you just if we determine, let's say, that the course of bricks around the bottom of a house can be painted, if the majority of the rest of the house is not brick, let's say, and we thought that that was okay, I think we could accept that until we get into the second part. So it's almost a confusing issue to me. The first statement gives us some leeway. The second statement doesn't give us an ounce of leeway.
Well, it does, it gives you leeway.
The second part?
If it was previously
Painting?
painted,
Always override that.
Well, we can override it, but the way it's written is all I'm saying is that it's almost a conflict between the two statements.
Appropriate doesn't mean it's wrong. Not appropriate doesn't mean
But it's a must.
Right, but the second part is a must. So if I read the first part, I can follow it and then just ignore the second part, or vice versa?
I don't see the discontinuation.
Okay.
I think it needs a call up to us. The commission.
Say what?
It's a call on us.
Yeah, well, all of it is, for that matter.
Well, I don't really care about it one way or the other. My late father-in-law said you were a fool to paint a brick wall, because then you have to maintain it every few years.
Right.
And a brick wall, you don't. And I thought he was a very wise man.
Yeah,
But,
Peter,
maybe his spirit underlies this.
was
Okay,
was a recommendation to change this language and another effort to maybe administer it a little bit
I
better on a
had
staff
no
level?
recommendation on this change. This was just brought up by Eric.
Okay.
I was just
There was
curious.
no staff recommendation on this.
Okay.
I was going to leave it at them because
What?
I wouldn't want to have to make that call.
Okay.
All right. On page 83, field of play, this is just typos. Line 3 of field of play says the field of play is excluded from these, should be standards.
I don't know my alphabet today.
Getting there.
Last word in that paragraph says regulations, that should be standards. That's all I had.
Page 12. It's more of a question than anything. Replacement materials match or are comparable to. Comparable to.
Well, again,
So if they had wood siding, they wanted to go to hardy board that emulated the wood siding that's there.
I guess I'm saying any material is comparable to another. Therefore, there is, you could,
yeah,
I mean, there's got to be some
You need
legal.
to check the definition of comparable. It means like.
Well, it means both things. I mean, that's the problem. It's ambiguous. And it's even pronounced differently.
Yeah.
comparable and comparable are,
Yeah, if I
are
had pronounced it that
used
way,
differently.
I'd get it.
We could be creating a loophole here.
Some wordsmithing to,
And I think staff can figure something
I like
out.
the pronunciation comparable, but obviously I read it the other way, so.
I think if we can look at something like width, depth, dimension, profile, something like that, if we can place that in there. So if it's a wood lap siding to a hardy siding, so long as the depth, the dimension, the width, the profile
looks,
isn't changing.
yeah.
Yes. If they're going from wood shake siding to hardy shakes, I mean, we keep using that as an example, but that's something you guys have been seeing a lot of, that can easily be a staff level review, and we can administer that. So I think Peter and I can work together. I think we've probably got something we could go for.
wordsmith that a little bit.
Next item on page 13.
But while we're on that siding one, how does that get into the style then that we were just discussing? Something like German siding and such.
Well, I took that one comparable material. The whole reason why I was in there is because you guys have expressed that you want to get out of the material business, because a lot of our requests that have come before us are changing, wood siding to hardy plank, and every time that we've heard a case that's literally just doing an exterior siding change in material, we've replaced it.
Right.
And if we're, approving things at that rate because we are okay with it, then if that's an acceptable material, then it can be a staff approval if they're not changing the design.
Other standard says something about style, right? Same style, I
So,
believe.
in my opinion, it'd be like if they went from lap siding to shake siding. At that point, it would have to come before you. If it went from,
Different style.
yeah, so, I'm just trying to get the building materials out, so that way when someone comes
I
and
know,
say,
but, so what about, so let's say there's a house with the German siding, and you put up hardy German siding, or whatever, the concrete fiber.
Yeah,
That would then be minor.
that would then be minor.
Okay, but what if then you're going not German?
But just lap siding, then it would come before you.
Perfect. So you're going to work on that?
Yeah. I'm just trying to get things like that to
Right,
where
yeah.
if
No.
we're approving it every single time it comes before you, does it need
The
to be
word
coming?
style is used in another standard.
Would you like me to change it to design or,
Think about
I
it,
think
take a look
style-
at it, we need to be able to get out, I agree, we need to be able to get out of the materials business. But it needs to look the same. I don't care what it's made of, as long as it looks the same.
There are a couple more, Peter, with that comparable, comparable issue.
there is one more, there is one below it that's a replacement of roofing material that is not compatible or I guess I put the not with that, not in there, it should be, is compatible. Or is not compatible, yeah, that's correct. Meaning that if they were going from an asphalt shingle to an architectural asphalt shingle, they don't have to come before you.
I was looking, for example, on 13, it's got the same issue where it's not compatible or comparable is the comparable part.
Comparable would be,
Same thing we just talked about on
yeah,
the previous.
that should just be taken out.
Kind of begs the question, is what kind of roofing material would not be approved, other than some levels of metal roofing, which I think is,
That would be,
isn't that already covered?
And metal roofing, I think, was covered under a total separate.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's even, we'll take a look at that.
So you're saying if you're replacing shingles,
with
metal or something?
terracotta, I don't know.
Yeah,
Exactly, Tesla's solar panel.
Well, while we're on that subject, not address, I still have a few more here, but
Okay.
there is another one that I had question about. There's a restriction for standing seam metal roofs
There is,
on the height and width of the seam.
I believe it's a 1/4 inch.
I understand the reason for that. Unfortunately, it's just shy of making a whole variety of other manufactured products
Available.
available. And so I think it's the height is the big issue.
I wasn't here for that. My guess is to make sure that it doesn't look like a metal shack, making sure that
it
it's
would keep
appropriate.
it from,
Stretched like a ½ inch higher, all of a sudden you have this huge variety available, price-wise and otherwise. So if somebody's,
So how much higher would it have, because I don't think quarter inch was ever a,
no, I think it's,
An inch.
I think it's an inch high. Which-
Okay.
Which eliminates almost every standing seam manufactured roof there is, except for some really low-priced ones.
okay.
The world is wide open.
That's,
I didn't want to talk about that.
okay, we won't talk about that then.
Okay, on page 23, this is one that got me early on. I think the change is, for C is excellent. I'm all in favor of that. I would say half the width, half the window opening is equally important. So it does not look like curb feelers on a Cadillac.
I would agree. Does anybody else have issue with that becoming a must?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it hasn't got to be down to the 16th of an inch, but that gives us plenty of leeway in there, so.
Folded the page or something. That's it.
I think my only concern on that one, now that I've thought about it a little bit, is those really large double bay windows. That'd be a very fat shutter.
I think that a window that's really wide should not
Shouldn't have a shutter?
shutters.
Okay.
Would not have historically, if you look at old houses with really wide windows, they don't have shutters. So
Except in Florida and hurricane areas, and those are different.
Those look like plywood.
To me, the more the shutter looks like a real operating shutter, the better.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that was thought about before we went down that road.
That's even more important to me than front-facing garages.
I would think so.
Do they actually operate?
I think I recall you coming in the office and getting a change for that, too.
All right, do we have any more comments on these proposals? If not,
I didn't realize how big it was gonna be when I was building it, but I did look up, that was when I went through everything, it really is not custom. And, to the extent that it should be, and the lady who came for us to build the pool, you remember her, she came back the second time.
125 Kelly, or not Kelly, Barrett, 25 Barrett. It's in the side. It's not in the front. It's visible from the front, but it's not in the front.
So that's not an accessory building?
It's not dealt with in accessory structures the way it should be.
But that sounds more like a PDO issue.
But you could regulate it in the historic district. I'm
Oh, yeah,
getting a
but I
no.
No development permit is required per the PDO.
For a playhouse. But if I want to put a shed back there, it is? Then that's kind
And
of,
don't-
that's got
And,
to,
and don't ask us how we have to determine
which one is
where,
which?
where it crosses that threshold.
This one has a swing set and a slide and then an upper
Well, I think,
playhouse.
Just drive down Dundee and look, you'll see.
Oh, I understand what you're saying, but.
okay, in addition to what we've just been discussing, which I think has been very useful, I hope it's been helpful to Peter and Darren.
Alex.
Alex.
I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. I forgot where I was. Oh, yes. There are other issues that don't directly go to the guidelines or the standards, but are important issues that the commission ought to think about. Ann and I have been talking about some, and various of us have talked informally amongst ourselves about them. I think it'd be a good idea to schedule a work session where we could have some of these policy discussions. Our calendars and let Peter know what our general availability is, and then I would invite everyone, and that includes myself, to submit matters for discussion to Peter. He can circulate them amongst us all. I'd invite Ann to participate in that process, and I'm sure, David, you're going to have some ideas. And everybody else.
And staff. Welcome to provide to that list, I would think.
All right.
If I might, I'm sorry, a little bit off topic, but the application itself doesn't ask for the existing color, it asks for the existing material. It just might be helpful, because it says proposed material, proposed color. I'm just wondering if you could add that to the application. It doesn't ask for the existing color.
It does not currently, no. We can add that. That's an easy fix. We can add another column.
Yeah.
Guidelines that requires anything in particular in the way of drawings.
Correct. That's correct. And you would be ideally qualified to make some suggestions for how we could deal with that in a practical way. I mean, we're obviously not going to require construction drawings at this stage, but we might be able to specify what degree of dimensions are required and things of that nature that you could suggest to us.
Yeah, and I think when we look into that, and not to get too far into the weeds on this one, but there's a difference between changing one window style on a drawing versus a new construction drawing.
Right.
On a new construction or a major modification, I would like, and this goes to staff, I would like to see some reasonably full-size drawings, because these little ones that we're getting in the 8.5 by 11, even if you use the whole page, are extremely hard for us old geezers to, A, read and understand it to there. Maybe some of the younger ones can have a little better chance at it, but you just...
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, though, we need to have Peter's input, because when he does his inspection, you know, how much detail is he in a position to go into in order to determine whether they've actually built what they applied for? And I don't think he's going to be up there with a micrometer.
No, and I'm not
Windows.
saying that.
So, you know.
I'm just saying that I need bigger things when I do the whole complex thing.
These are all subjects that now we've all had experience dealing with these cases. We know the kinds of issues that we have to deal with, and let's put the brain power to work. That's all, my suggestion. So please let Peter know as soon as you reasonably can what your ideas are, and availability is over the next couple of months.
Okay. Perfect.
Any need to stay, or are we going to go home and have dinner?
We just need to adjourn the meeting.
Go home and have dinner.
I do too. I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
All right, I'm not even sure we're in a meeting, but if we're...
Oh, we are. We are in a meeting.
We need a second on that?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
You can't say we're not in a meeting.
All right, well.